And away we go on our actually Wednesday edition of the Hey Mary Kay podcast, a day later than normal with the holiday. So we're doing this on Wednesday instead of Tuesday, but it doesn't mean that our Football Insider subscribers didn't come through with a bunch of good questions for us, Mary Kay. And we're going to start with this one from Ken in Durham, North Carolina. So we are taking everything off the field, off the table here. This is strictly on the field. And we are taking the future out of the equation here. This is strictly for 2022. And Ken asks, would you rather have Baker Mayfield for all 17 games this season or the 11-6 split between Jacoby Brissett and Deshaun Watson? And he says, again, strictly speaking football and strictly speaking winning games this season.
You know what, Dan, I don't know how our texters do this every single week, but they come up with the best questions. And this is a really great question. It provides a lot of food for thought, and it's really making me rack my brains here to figure out what I would want in this type of a situation. And you really do have to think about it and come up with some pros and cons. But I'm going to go with the first thing that comes to my mind, and that is I would still take Jacoby Brissett for 11 and Deshaun Watson for 6 over Baker Mayfield for 17. And the reason why I would do this is I think it's in part because I have in my mind the Baker Mayfield from 2021. And what we don't know yet about Baker Mayfield is he different? Is he better now that he has had his torn left labrum repaired? Is he going to be more like the Baker Mayfield of 2020 that was exciting and got the Browns to the playoffs and, you know, still had confidence and those kinds of things? Or is he going to be the player that we saw last year that by the end of the season, when he was in Pittsburgh and he was getting sacked 9 times and getting 5 passes batted down, you almost had to wonder if his career was over, not just his career with the Browns, but in general, if he was just finished. And so, you know, I just still have that Baker in my mind. And I think I'm going to need him to show me that he's not that guy and to prove to me that he still is the player with all the moxie and the accuracy and all of those things that he played with in 2020 before I can really trust him again. So I'm going to go with Jacoby Brissett and Deshaun Watson. And even though it's not the ideal situation, I still think that would give them a better chance to make the playoffs.
I would love to disagree with you just for the sake of disagreeing. But the one thing that Ken didn't say, and you can't take this out of the equation, is Kevin Stefanski is still the head coach. And there was just too much of a disconnect there last year. We've talked about it so many times in this podcast. Kevin did not want to give Baker the freedom that Baker wanted. You know, Kevin wanted to run his system. You know, there was probably a trust issue there. He didn't want to open it up. Baker wanted it to be more open. People can go back and find the now infamous clickbait story. The story is not infamous, but the tweet about it was, and it's all laid out in there that you wrote, Mary Kay. And that would still exist. And the other part of this is, even though I've said on a couple pods, and we'll probably talk about it during the live show, I don't know what to expect out of Deshaun Watson when he comes back in week 13. But I still think I'd rather bet on his upside for 6 games and bet on what he could be for 6 games, even if it's not the Deshaun Watson he could be next year. I'd be more willing to bet on his talent and upside than on kind of the ceiling I think we've seen with Baker.
Yeah. And, you know, again, I don't know how much of it had to do with injuries or whatnot, but it just seemed like he was just turning the ball over too much at inopportune times. It seemed like defenses had caught up with Baker Mayfield to the point where they were taking away the things that he did well. They finally figured out, hem him into the pocket, get your hands up, bat those passes down. Don't let them get out on the bootlegs and the keepers and the rollouts. And then another thing that I keep harping on that I just have seen him do so many times is, you know, he just guns it in the red zone. He never really was able to take any English off the ball and put that touch on it so that you could catch that touchdown pass for him as easily as it should have been. So I do think that all of those things wrapped up together, you know, just don't lend itself to a playoff type of season or success once you get into the playoffs. Because, remember that once you finish off the 17 games, then you have playoffs after that. And again, that wasn't part of the question, but who would you want once you get into the playoffs? So yeah, I think that, I feel pretty comfortable going with it this way. I think in part, now we haven't seen Jacoby Brissett play yet this season in a real football game. We only saw him play, I think, 4 series in 3 series or 4 series in a preseason game. And those were not good series. Now they had an agenda there where they were trying to get the ball to Anthony Schwartz. That didn't work out very well. So we really don't know exactly what to expect from Jacoby Brissett, but as long as he manages the game and doesn't turn the ball over and relies on his playmakers and also the strength of his defense, then I think he gives you, at least in those first 11 games, at least what you were going to get from Baker Mayfield.